What do you miss about the internet of the past? The fact that it still felt like some kind of mystery we had to figure out. There was always another website or something that you didn't know about. You could just kind of find new stuff every day and it felt like you were discovering something. It felt like a process of exploration. Now everything's kind of focused on the same couple of platforms. The absolutely tacky color schemes people's sites had. Black background with yellow text with green links, you betcha. A line of animated GIFs for a page break, no problem. And frames, lol. List of links on one side loading stuff into a frame on the other. Hit counters and guest books. The absolutely tacky color schemes people's sites had. Black background with yellow text with green links, you betcha. A line of animated GIFs for a page break, no problem. This goes for a lot of people in this thread, but I highly recommend you pick up a game called Hypnospace Outlaw. It's an early internet simulator investigation game with an amazing loving attention to detail in recreating the beautiful hideousness of late 90s design. And it's actually a good game too, once you stop browsing the fake retro internet long enough to play it. It's also on consoles, but, seriously, if there is one game that needs to be played on a mouse plus keyboard, this is it. You could click on a site and read an article without 5 videos autoplaying at the same time. A giant pop-up you have to acknowledge after each paragraph, and the whole thing wasn't behind a paywall. I use Reddit for everything because it's literally one of the last sites I can think of that doesn't have 95% of the screen taken up with ads. YouTube was far more genuine fun when not everyone could be monetized. It used to be only the biggest and cleanest channels got invited to actually be paid. You used to just upload videos just for fun and find other people interested in the same topic. It felt a bit more organic. Now it's all a numbers game, and the biggest channels aren't just everyday people who got lucky, but clickbait made by content farms that have cracked the code to gaming the algorithm and gaining millions of views with minimal effort. I miss the days when someone might upload a quick video of their cat meowing for its dinner and it was 20 seconds and then I'd sit there watching other cats meowing and it's half an hour later. Now, I see a video and it's 10:04 and I know it's just padded out and it makes me want to just not watch at all. Cinema Sins is a perfect example of this. When they would trash a movie in say 6 minutes, I'd watch the video and then maybe watch another video. Now they're 25 minutes and I just say screw this and go do something else, so they lose my viewership completely now. Was researching an M.2 drive today. Found what I wanted and pulled the trigger on Amazon. My wife comes down to me later saying, "What's an M.2 drive? I'm getting nothing but ads for this. Apart from the data mining, I don't know way they'd advertise an M.2 drive to a family who had just fucking bought one anyway." Edit, changed I'm getting because it was annoying me that I got mixed ups between I've gotten and I'm getting. This will betray my age, but I miss web rings. You'd find a site you liked, and sometimes at the bottom of the page there would be a link for the web ring. It would take you to a similar site that was usually independently operated. Think Josie's fan sites and the like. This was important, because search engines weren't nearly as powerful back in the day, and some of the best sites weren't necessarily ones that would pop up on a search results page. Thus, web rings. I don't know that a web ring itself is what I'm missing. I guess it was always sort of a crapshoot, but you'd sometimes find really cool hobby pages and fan pages that way and you wouldn't necessarily find them any other way in the mid-90s. I miss Homestar so much. To this day I still quote it, like saying J.E.orp instead of job, or simply telling people the system is down. I also miss something awful. That was some of the funniest shit back in high school, although it's troubling to know that many of the people from that world became the 4chan types and went on to be content predators. Web pages that were not dynamic, you know, the kind that finished loading and then laid off my RAM and CPU until I clicked or typed something, the kind of that I could scroll through at my own pace, without triggering more loading and causing my computer's fans to speed way up, and everything else slow way down. pages that would not get suddenly snatched away from me and replaced with a snap, and or a pop-up, if I took too long to read them, or scrolled through them at the wrong pace. These kinds of web pages give me the same infuriating bugged feeling as browsing in a brick-and-mortar store, and having employees hovering around me and repeatedly asking me if I need help with anything, and other customers constantly asking me to move. The web that existed before strategically interrupting readers became a well-developed science. What I miss about MSN is that you actually talked, you logged on, and that meant, hey, I'm here, let's talk. Now we are connected 24/7, someone sends you a message, maybe you reply a few hours later, they reply tomorrow. It's so sporadic. Man, I had some great conversations into the small hours on MSN putting the world to rights. There was a time when it was completely normal and expected that you could leave your meat identity at the door when you went online. Everything was pseudonyms and superficial judgment was so much easier to dismiss or avoid. Hell, one of the main reasons I like Reddit is that it's one of the last places you can still do this without being weird. Reddit is unfortunately very far from old forums. Threads here last for a day or two, then a few months later it gets archived and that's it. While on the forum I was active on 15-20 years ago still has decade-old threads ongoing. Also, I used to know the people on the forums. Now I'm replying to you but I don't even have an idea what your username is. I miss the slight jankiness of it. Websites that weren't quite perfect. Some that looked like a 5-year-old designed it. The logos that had personality, knowing if you liked an image, you saved it because you were gonna lose it. The memes were simpler and dumber. You came home from school to crank up the internet to see some fellow preteens' animated series on YouTube which was drawn poorly and all the voices had different qualities because everyone was recording them on different mics in different homes. I feel nostalgia for the peer-to-peer file sharing programs like Napster, BearShare, Kazaa, LimeWire, etc. You could never trust song labels. Every single parody song was suddenly Weird Al and it would suck when you thought you found a new or obscure song by a band you loved and it was actually a song you already knew by them or sometimes a song by a different band altogether. That movie that you wanted to download, which was always in several huge parts that would take hours to days to download, ends up being porn you didn't want. That porn that you really wanted ends up being a beheading video. It was so chaotic and random and full of viruses that would fuck your computer too. Those were crazy days and you never really knew what to expect. Was like the Wild West. I miss Jeeves. I miss how search engines used to try to bring you a list of websites relevant to your search. Google is always just trying to pull up the answer by picking a sentence they feel as relevant from a website they picked as right. Even if the answer is correct, it lacks the in-depth context that you often need to understand it. Then, underneath the answer instead of additional websites that can be used to gather additional info, it just lists alternative versions of your question, which when clicked on list additional no context, one-sentence answers. When it wasn't basically a corporate hellscape with an endless barrage of advertisements and relentless format copying. My company is making a product based solely on a TikTok trend. What's cutting edge and boundary pushing about a supplement based on questionable science and even more dubious marketing research of its trending? Let's see if it sticks. I miss when it was wild and amateur. People got famous, but it was from outrageous stuff that no one had thought of before. You used to be able to brute force 9 and go on the internet and talk to professors exchanging information from all over the world, highly educated people, and you had things like ICQ online chat rooms where you could talk with people from all over the world. Now you have people looking for constant validation. Do you like the pic of my food and or it's, if I don't get a million likes I will kill myself on Facebook Live. And everyone you talk to is an expert in something. Even without a degree or doctorates they will tell you that they are an expert because they saw a YouTube video. The information age. When niche communities became mainstream, so did extremist bubbles. Those bubbles became echo chambers for willful ignorance, confirmation bias, and unveiled hatred. The information age was the ability for anyone to learn about anything. It may have been anarchic in the way information could be collected, but today it's entirely possible to avoid ever seeing conflicting information. All of this so companies like Facebook and Google can monetize their operations. As someone who's been online since 1991, I remember the early days. I miss the internet that was dominated by tech-savvy geeks and nerds, and message boards that required effort to join and were moderated, as opposed to free-for-all social media platforms, like Facebook and Twitter. Social media brought a buttload of idiots and assholes onto the internet. Sure, we had people like that before social media, but it wasn't the norm. Probably because it wasn't generally tolerated on moderated message boards and getting online was too difficult, complicated for the average person. One thing I definitely don't miss is paying huge fees per hour. Merc. It was the first time I ever got to engage in insane discussions with random people around the world. There are plenty of nicknames I remember, but one moderator was called Tom_Waits, and to this day I still remember the hilarious conversations I had with this dude, me a 16-17-year-old and this 50-plus guy. There was other chat programs like Kick back then, but it was only real-life friends on my friends list there. I guess I just missed that feeling of talking to some stranger on the internet, the world apart for the first time, not chatting itself. The element of mystery and authenticity to it. I remember reading someone else's quote about how the internet used to be a lot smaller, but felt a lot larger. If you spend a lot of time on the internet now, there's kind of a collective knowledge of what's out there, like even if you haven't been to all these sites, you have a general idea of what they are. I miss truly stumbling across something weird and unknown in the early 2000s. Everything feels very commercial and predictable now. Part of this could just be nostalgia about being a kid in the 2000s though. AOL chat rooms. Something that is absolutely missing from my life is a sense of community. The chat rooms weren't a perfect substitute, but they do in a pinch. I haven't been in any of my old car forums in about 8 years. It had a sense of community as well. You actually got to know people by their username and what car they had. Sometimes there'd be meetups and you could actually meet some of them. How nice I once thought it was to catch up on people's lives I hadn't heard from in years. That still very human connection of being in the loop on family happenings and planning to see each other and using it as a tool to strengthen real relationships. And then some asshole somewhere said, "Hey, let's weaponize this thing." And people's closets and ugly attitudes came out of the closet, and there was just no unseeing that. Sometimes I see old photos or posts on Facebook from 6 years ago and I get an ache in my chest remembering how innocent and fun life was before people decided the thing to do was vomit their skeletons and darkness all over everyone else, since they could now do that behind a keyboard and screen. There's a Trevor Moore, R.I.P., song The Ballad of Billy John that pretty much sums it all up for me. The fun, open communities created by IRC, BBSs, and small but close-knit communities. The lack of paywalls, advertising that wasn't so creepy, humble and passionate, rather than scripted online videos. The ability to go places without constantly accepting cookies. The ability to view publicly posted content without needing to log in. Being able to host or mod your own game servers without being beholden to the game developer or publisher. Sites which didn't favor mobile apps over desktop. Yahoo, AOL Instant Messenger. Yes, seriously, they were awesome too. There's a corollary to this. It used to be we didn't have to worry about Bo's Law when we made edgy jokes. Dumb people wouldn't come along and take it literally, so suddenly you got a bunch of racist assholes that think you're on their side. You can no longer pretend to say something stupid and expect that people will understand it's a joke. So now when I type shit, many times I sigh and have to put a /s at the end, because even when I'm saying an intentionally over-the-top stupid thing, there's a lot of people that say stupider things unironically, so we can't make edgy jokes because there's too many stupid people on the internet that ruined it for everyone. Rage comics were objectively funnier and more creative than the effortless garbage we call memes now. They were personal stories, original content, or relatable quips set in a format that took effort to put together, with a classic scene scenario punchline. You know how jokes work. Now a new meme is born, gets run through the same goddamn jokes you've seen 100 times, and then proceeds to die. Original meme culture died when the awkward seal began replacing comics. I have no karma to lose over this. Flash. Thousands of completely free ad-free games, playable on any computer or device. Did you know what early smartphones were totally compatible with Flash? But no, Apple had to murder the whole language, just so they could make a buck off the crappy mobile clones of the games they killed off. I've got nothing against game developers making a living, but now it's impossible to find freeware. Everywhere you look for it, you instead find marketing. There were niche interest internet forums that fostered pretty genuine fraternity. Real friendships were made, charitable causes among members were funded, people met up locally and nationally. Forums of the 90s and zeros were pretty great. These days, with Reddit and social media, they don't have the same level of mainstream engagement they once did. Discussion is far more atomized, it's just different, and worse. When my mom would tell me to be careful on the internet, instead of me needing to constantly remind her that she needs to be careful on the internet, every couple of months, she will ask me how to get into her Facebook/Amazon/Netflix/etc. account, and that it's suddenly asking for a mysterious password that she insists she has never once had to enter before. I don't think she knows a single password, although I suppose that could be a good thing. She would definitely fall for a phishing scam or 200. I still think MySpace was legit. You made your own wallpaper, could make quizzes about yourself that your friends could take. Find out which friends knew you the most. You could have your favorite music or music video play when people visited your profile. My profile had Mad World that would play when you visited it. Plus posting on each other's wall was so cool. Tom was my best friend. What a cool guy. MySpace was like inviting a friend into your private bedroom to smoke some weed, chill, and discuss your favorite things. Facebook is like being shunned in a corporate cubicle. Every time you pop your head out, all you see is bigotry, ads, racism, misandry, misogyny, and every relative in your whole family judging your every thought. Not having to choose between social media, aka sites that require some sort of ID and therefore are prone to attention whoring and marketing and are heavily moderated by sociopath underpaid wage slaves and power-tripping loaves. YouTube, which has basically become corporate television 2.0, and some shithole dump of a site that is so full of anti-vax weirdos, Holocaust deniers and flat earthers that it is hard to avoid them. I mean, I actually don't mind those people existing, they have to go somewhere. I just would like there to be a counterbalance in places like BitChute so that it's an actual alternative to corporate garbage media platforms. The lack of tracking apps, bots, and algorithms peering into every little site and mining every little bit of data for the sole purpose of monetizing your entire internet existence. Additionally, people weren't directly groomed with active propaganda tactics vis-a-vis hordes of bots that corporations and billionaires have the luxury of keeping in circulation 24/7. Sure, people still fell victim to confirmation bias and only visited sites that they wanted to, but the difference between then and now is that those sites weren't brought to them because of their browsing and shopping history, or what they posted on social media. The threshold into dystopian corporate wasteland has already been crossed as far as I'm concerned. I appreciate the corporate side of the internet nowadays on YouTube, but for YouTube, in terms of the channels and not YouTube's business model, website's business model, I like how a lot of channels, educational stuff, people are using YouTube as an incentive for income and fame, and that makes me and my family who are fairly older that don't like the funny side of the internet interested in watching stuff together, like videos on food, tech, news, etc. But for the old internet, I'm 24 in a few months. I've used the internet since I was able to touch a computer, iMac G3, in like 2000, seeing the evolution of the internet to find fun things, fun games, hidden little sites, custom stuff, heck, things for stick games which were everything back in the day, old Newgrounds, a bomb's world, what MySpace used to be, only in history, never used it, etc. Nowadays it's just different. We have to be on there, can't really find the fun in it except for a few things. My talk of YouTube also applies to the whole internet now.